to remind you, today we're going to be starting chapter 19. We're going to be taking a break somewhere in class today to allow you to assemble stock groups. Now, we've got a big class in here. We've got 36 people in this class. So what I'm going to allow you to do is to assemble into groups of 4 to 5. So you're going to be in a group of 4 to 5 people. Here's some of the things I'm going to encourage you to think about, guys. Who here would consider themselves to be a good writer? So a couple of folks put up their hands. Who here considers himself to be pretty good at math? Okay, we got a couple other folks. Who here doesn't know what they're good at yet? That's okay too, guys. You're going to be splitting up the assignment because what you're going to be doing, and we're going to be talking about this all class today, you're going to be playing the markets with $100,000. So what I'm going to be asking you to do is to figure how you're going to best combine. I would want a writer in my group. I would want somebody who, if you know somebody who already plays the markets, I want that person in my group. I would want somebody who could do the research, because what's the biggest problem, guys, with group work? What happens with group work? Distractions for sure, but what's the other thing that happens with group work? One person ends up doing all the lifting. So surround yourself with people that you trust on this project. All right, so guys, anyway, we're going to be getting into that today. This Wednesday, remember, you have your first test. And guys, on test 1 on Wednesday, we're going to be doing lockdown browser, and it's going to be all multiple choice, true or false. So, what are the bonus questions going to be about? You remember what I told you? Yes? Could be. Certainly could be. It could be anything we've talked about in class. Could certainly be on there. It has been known to make an appearance. Now, guys, what do you think? If you don't know the answer to a bonus question, what should you do? Yes? Make me laugh. If you make me laugh, I'll give you a point. If I literally am reading out loud and I'm laughing out loud at what you've written, you just earn a bonus point, even if the question was completely incorrect. Now, that's with one caveat. If it's a joke you wouldn't tell your grandmother, please don't put it on the test. I can't give you credit for those kind of jokes. So, guys, just a reminder. The date is wrong on there. I apologize, but your top 10 assignment is due tonight at midnight. So we're also going to be hitting into the rate of return. Rate of return is not going to be due to the 23rd. Now, the rate of return is if you're doing a stock portfolio, how much money are you making? I'll show you how to do this in class. The stock game submissions are due on the 18th. Have no fear, guys, because we're going to be forming into groups today. When we cover this game on Friday, check this out. I'm going to be giving you an A-grade paper to show you what it takes to get an A on this class. Now, here's the trick, guys. I hand out a hard copy of this paper. I don't make it that easy that I send you a digital copy. I send you a hard copy, or I give you a hard copy. Each group gets one hard copy of this paper. If you lose that hard copy, I will not give you another. So it comes down to, I'm going to be handing you an A-grade paper. It's going to be something that you can use as a model for your own A-grade paper. We're going to cover this stuff. With me so far, guys? Okay, well, let us continue. Guys, in terms of the mid-semester, because your stock game makes up 20% of your final grade in this class, and we haven't done that yet, here's the way your grades are going to be weighted for the midterm. Your test, I hate to put the high pressure on you, but the test this Wednesday is a 60% percentage of your grade. You ask yourself, why do I do that? Most people tend to do better on multiple choice and true and false tests than assignments, because we have some folks who are still learning how to write at a collegiate level, so I stack the deck a little bit. We get to the end of the semester, it's the same deal. The percentage on homework goes down because you're all doing a major project together. So your final grade will be 60% on tests, 40% combined between the stock game and homework. Any questions, guys? All right, we're going to be checking in frequently today, but we're going to start off with a little bit of current events. If you do not have something in front of you to take notes, please pull of General Motors, who is on strike against General Motors. I don't know how much of this you've been seeing in the news, but does anybody know why this strike is happening? Anybody have any idea? Well, we're going to get built into that. Let's talk first of all. Who here can tell me what a union is? What's a union, guys? What's a union?
Essentially a group of workers all agreeing that they're only going to work if they get certain deals from the company.
Exactly right. It's the idea of leverage and multiple people coming and working together. So let's say, for example, Julia shows up at my office and says, Tonkin, I don't like the grade I got on this paper. I think I should have gotten an A+ on it. And I say, well, no big deal. I feel differently. I think you're going to keep your A-. Well, let's compare the situation. And if you guys are members of a labor union, and you all showed up in my office saying, we all want A+, or you're not making your way down this hallway. In which way do you have a stronger bargaining position with me? Yeah, it's strength in numbers. So that's the emphasis why unions came to prominence in the first place. Now, this is not a labor relations class, but in the United States, we had unions because of the way people were treated in factory conditions in the early 20th century, in the coal mines, etc. What the folks at the United Auto Workers are saying to General Motors, we think we should have better medical, we should have better benefits, and the people who are coming in as temporary employees right now should have a path to become full-time employees and members of our union. General Motors' statement on the other side is we need to have flexibility. We want to have part-time workers. We can pay less so that we can pull people in as we need. As a result, these two parties have hit an impasse. Well, you may say to yourself, it's not so good for either of them, but how does it affect the rest of us? Guys, when a union goes on strike and slows down or stops production, how might this be making the people of Detroit or other parts of Michigan feel the pinch right now? Yes?
There's that much less money going into the economy.
That's exactly right, guys. The person who is making, can anybody guess? I want to hear from this side of the room today. How much is the average General Motors employee making? Somebody who is an hourly employee of General Motors. Anybody have a guess? We know the minimum wage in Pennsylvania is what, $7.25? What's the average General Motors worker making? Take a guess. What's a guess? So we got a guess for 10. Let's go higher. We have a guess. How much you think? Oh, let's go higher. Anybody else got a guess on this side of the room? How much is the average GM worker making? 50. Actually, not too far off. $45 an hour. A lot of these guys and girls were making $45 an hour. Not starting at 45, but working their way up. If you do the math on those are pretty close to six-figure salaries. Right now, when those folks are on strike, they're getting what they call strike pay. That's $250 a week. Well, somebody take the number 250 and divide it by 40 for me. 250 divided by 40. $6 an hour. That's what these individuals are making for a 40-hour work week. So you're going from $45 an hour to $6 an hour. What does that do with your discretionary spending, guys? None of these folks went to see the new Joker movie this weekend. None of these folks are making big purchasing decisions right now. So when you have impasses like this, it affects the greater economy. Here's another part of it, guys. Well, somebody tell me, what's something that goes into a car beside metal, beside doors? What is something you have to purchase to make a car, Mackenzie? What goes into a car? What's a part that it needs? I'm sorry? Yeah, absolutely. And the part of that engine might be made by a supplier. If the supplier is not needed, the supplier is not getting the work, and the people who supply that supplier are not getting work. People who make tires are not getting the work. It is a ripple effect on the economy. And here's the other trick, too. The journalist said it himself. If you were thinking about buying a car and you wanted that red Corvette and that specific color of red, it's not available right now because the assembly line is shut down. You're going to go somewhere else. Pretty interesting stuff. Bless you. Yes, sir.
Can they hire scabs?
And for everybody who doesn't know what the term scab is a derogatory term toward people who cross the picket line. At some point, they probably will, if this strike does not get resolved. But it all comes down to what kind of pressure will the union exert, sometimes using questionably legal means, too. At some point, you can probably bring in temporary workers if you can prove that your business is at risk of shutting down. But keep your eye on this, guys. It's something we're going to be talking more about. My first question to you this morning, though, because we're talking about finance, is what would you do with $100,000? So we're going to randomly call on some folks this morning to see what you would do with $100,000. Who's going to be first today? And who do we lean on? Gabby, what would you do with $100,000?
I would save it.
Save it. Tell me more. Like, why wouldn't you spend it?
I feel like I don't really have anything right now that I need.
So
Save it so that I need to do.
would you put it in the bank or would you put it in just hey, liquid cash, not a bad thing. Who else is going to tell me what they do with $100,000? Jeff is not here this morning, so, and neither is Felix, but Pete, you're closest to them. What would you do with $100,000?
I don't know. I would donate a part of it, maybe save the
Did you say donate? Yeah, what would you donate to? What kind of a cause?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you right now. I would need you to think about that.
Something charitable, huh? I love it. That's a great way to think. We're going to call one or two other people and see what they would do here. Who do we have now? We got Seth. What would you do?
I would just keep 90,000 of it and then give 10,000 to my brother to help him pay for his new truck.
Man, I need a sibling like you. My brother's always the one asking me for money. I would love it if I had a brother who would give me $10,000. One other person can tell me what they're going to do here. Let's see. Who we got this morning? We got Tanner. What would you do with $100,000?
I'll invest it.
Invest. So, like, what would you put your money into?
Invest stocks.
That's exactly right. Play in the markets, right? Has this been a good couple of years to be in the markets? For the most part, yeah. We're in what they call a bull market right now. And bull versus bear means bulls are people who believe in the future. When you think about it, what does a bull do when its horns are up? Yeah. It gets ready and it charges at what color? What color makes bulls go? Red. Absolutely right. And then the matador screams, "Olé," whenever you go through and don't hit the flag. But my point is, guys, we've got a good market to invest in. You have a chance at making some money. And for the entire month of October, you are going to be playing the markets. So what I'm going to be asking you to do, guys, after we take our break time today to allow you to form into groups, I'm going to be asking one member of the group to email me by Friday a list of everyone in their group name, and CC on the email all team members. So you're going to be forming a group. I'm going to ask you also to come up with a creative name. Like some people are just like, oh, we're the stock group. No, give me a creative name. Anybody here ever see The Wolf of Wall Street? Yeah, great movie, right? Sometimes people pick names from that movie, for example, to be their stock group names. Go crazy with it, whoever you want it to be. But by close of class on Friday, by this Friday, by the time we leave, I need a stock group with everybody in it. Once you create your groups, I will be creating assignments for you on Canvas to have groups in them. And here's my other suggestion, guys. And you can do what you want. You can form a group with whoever. Move around the room a little bit. You may find some more expertise beside the people you're immediately sitting next to. One of the biggest mistakes people make in group work is only working with their friends. Why is that a mistake, guys? Why is it a mistake to only work with your friends? Yes? That's exactly right. So you might find more expertise outside. By the way, guys, I encourage you in life, next time you do a major purchase, if you have to do something with your house, if you have to buy a car, my advice is not to deal with friends. Why do I say that? Why is it a bad idea sometimes to do business with your friends? Well, let's say, for example, I owe you $50 and we're friends, and I don't pay you back for 6 months. Are we still going to be friends? Yeah, exactly right. It's the same idea in the world of business. But I digress. Guys, today we're going to be talking all about the markets. We're going to be talking about the difference between stocks and bonds, how you can make money doing it, what the risks are of stocks versus bonds, and how you get into other things like mutual funds. On the surface, this doesn't sound like it would be that exciting. By the way, how many of you are finance majors? All right, for the finance majors, you guys will have lots to go on for this sort of stuff. We're going to tell you why we get involved in the securities market in the first place, what the advantages and disadvantages are of each approach. And guys, the reason this is so important here, by show of hands, how many of you believe by the time that you retire, if you're a United States citizen, you're going to have Social Security available to you? A couple of folks. I'm not optimistic. I'm older than you, and I'm not optimistic. I'm going to have Social Security. So the idea of finance is also investing in yourself and making sure that you are preparing to have a good retirement as well. Here's the other trick, guys. Members of your generation are going to live to new heights. Guys, in terms of how long you're supposed to live, people who are members of Generation Z, how long will the average Generation Z female live? What age? Any guesses? Yes. It's not quite that high, but we're getting there. It's mid-80s for females. So let's say, for example, you retire at 65. Hallelujah, wouldn't that be awesome? Can you live for 20 years without an income? You got to have an income of some kind. So that's why you save your whole life to be able to have some quality of life in your retirement. We're also going to talk about how we know what the economy is up to. Guys, the reason that we get into securities in the first place, I know we'll be jumping ahead a little bit. Why do companies go public? Yes, exactly right. Let's say, for example, I'm Amazon.com, and it's 1995. I have this crazy idea that I'm going to sell books and CDs on the internet. I would love to grow this idea. By the way, Jeff Bezos, the guy who started Amazon, anybody guess where he got his startup capital from? Anybody know where he got it? It wasn't the bank. Any guesses? Loans from family and friends. Amazon literally got started with loans from family and friends. Now the trick is, he had some pretty high role in family and friends. Jeff Bezos himself came from money. But a lot of people start businesses that way. If you're a corporation, though, and you want to go public, if you're Uber or you're Lyft, you can get this massive cash infusion. Well, the other reason why the stock market or the investment market in general is good is because people like you and me can make money in it. Is anybody playing the markets on their own? Oh, you can do it so easy, guys. There's something called Robinhood. You can literally do it on your smartphone, and you can do it without fees. It's a great way for young people to get involved. We've got what we refer to as primary and secondary markets. I promise I won't call on you. I just want to know if you've ever heard this term before. Who here has ever heard of an IPO? Yeah. Everybody gets excited if we're going to have our IPO. What an IPO means, that's the first time your company can sell stock to the general public. Why do companies get so excited about it? Why are companies so excited about IPOs? Any guesses? What do you think? Shelby, what do you think? Oh, for sure. And it's also kind of saying we've made it. We're a publicly traded company. Write this down. The IPO is the one time you can buy stock directly from a company. Write this down. An IPO is the one time you can buy a stock directly from the company. That's why it's such a big deal. You can get in on the ground floor. Guys, Amazon was a huge one. Alibaba, which is a Chinese e-commerce giant, was a big one. Uber was a sizable one. Some of them have been less than stellar. Snapchat was not so great. Facebook was amazing when it came out. So, in common speak, guys, the security market helps us as businesses raise capital. And that's not just stocks. We're also going to talk about bonds, too. The other thing they do for us as investors, they give us a chance we can make lots of money. It's good stuff. So what do investment bankers do at this point in time? Well, you've got several folks. You've got investment bankers who are people who are basically helping you buy securities on the open market. And then you've got institutional investors. Here's the difference, guys. Now keep in mind, when I say this, the online world is making this stuff more direct. We can do this ourselves now. For example, if you wanted to buy stock in a company, you could go to an investment bank, or you could go in, or you could do it yourself with your own account. That means you're just saying, I'm taking a risk, I am buying stock, I'm playing the markets. Guys, there's been some pretty good opportunities for that stuff too. But show of hands again, one more time. Anybody playing the markets? What are you playing?
I played in high school.
So what are you investing in?
Well, we were invested in I don't even remember the junior year, but all I know is we got second place out of the whole school. So.
By the way, this is a person I've won on my team. She's already got expertise. In second place in the whole school, I'd be clawing my way to the front of the room to try to get her on my team. Guys, you can buy stocks. For example, I own stock in Planet Fitness. I own stock in Kroger Foods. I buy one or two stocks here or there through my online brokerage firm because I want to. And then we have what we call institutional investors. Here's the way institutional investors work. Let's say, for example, none of us are experts on the stock market, except Sam is. He's our expert. He knows all this stuff. We can pull our money and give it to him to invest for us. And that's how we get things like mutual funds. That's how we get things like retirement funds. It's a good idea to do both. It's a good idea to play the markets and have somebody who is good at it play them for you. So, guys, in terms of some other key terms you need to know, any place where you can buy and sell shares in companies is a stock exchange. What's the biggest one? What's the one we always see in the movies? Like the Wolf of Wall Street. Where's it at? Yes. New York Stock Exchange. And guys, if you ever had a picture like what the New York Stock Exchange is like, how would you describe it? You seen the Wolf of Wall Street? What's the stock exchange like? People running across the room with papers, phones in both hands, these big overalls on so they can keep all their stuff together. Guys, I'm here to tell you it's not like that anymore because it's all electronic now. If you get a chance, by the way, we're doing a school business trip to the New York Stock Exchange this spring. I highly encourage you to go. Number one, it's cheap. You get 2 nights in New York City, and number two, you get to walk on the floor of the stock exchange. It's pretty cool. And then we've got what we call the OTC market, over the counter. What that means is that there are stocks that are not listed on the big exchanges. So if you ever watch CNBC, they'll tell you about what the S&P and the Dow are doing, and they're going to tell you what's going on in the New York Stock Exchange. There are stocks that are so small, they're not listed on those exchanges, and they call them over the counter because you have to dig and find out about them. You can read any day of the week what's going on with Amazon. That little tech pharmaceutical startup that might be something worth investing in, you're going to find them on the OTC market. If you have seen the Wolf of Wall Street, these are the stocks they were dealing in. Stocks that were not listed on big exchanges. And then we've got something called the NASDAQ. Here's where it gets a little interesting, guys. The first electronic stock market ever was the NASDAQ. And it was basically a series of interconnects between different exchanges to allow us to have truly global stock exchanges. Here's the trick, though. The NASDAQ itself is also a publicly traded entity. So you can buy shares of one of the companies that actually facilitates the exchange. So you can buy shares of an exchange as well. Gets a little hairy, gets a little strange, but it all ties together. So these are pictures of the New York Stock Exchange. I want you to notice, guys, this is what it would look like in the big swing in 1980s. When people were driving Ferraris, when Leonardo DiCaprio was driving in his driveway on the Wolf of Wall Street, and looked at paper everywhere. At the end of the day, it was crazy. This is a crowded day on Wall Street now. On one hand, it's kind of like, wow, it's not that exciting. On the other hand, it's like, wow, technology has taken us this far. Here's my prediction. 10 or 15 years from now, I don't even know if this floor will exist. Why, guys? It's symbolic. It's symbolic. I think we have a pretty good analogy. I'm thinking of a place where people used to gather. In fact, you may have gone there with your parents when you were young in the 80s, and, well, for you guys into the 2000s. It looks like this now. What kind of place am I thinking about that might be different between the time you were young and now in terms of the number of people who go there? The mall, you got it. Used to be a Friday night ritual for people in high school. Not as much anymore. So who are the big stock exchanges? New York is still the biggest one, but London's up there. These are examples of some of the biggest stock exchanges out there. So Shanghai's big too, though, because of China's prominence in the market at this point in time. Guys, we have a couple of things you need to know about too. The Securities and Exchange Commission is basically the group that makes sure that things don't go crazy on the stock market and fraud does not happen. I want to hear from this side of the room. It was formed in 1934, guys. Is that coincidental? Like, why did the Securities and Exchange Commission come out during that period of time? This side of the room. Yes?
That's when everything was booming, and especially when a lot of fraud was occurring.
It was exactly right. It was right after the Great Depression when we had the Dow basically fall through the floor, and the Securities and Exchange Commission said we don't want to see people get cheated out of their money again. We think about people like Bernie Madoff. By the way, guys, I know that is no end to the entertainment for me that this guy who was the greatest scammer in the history of Wall Street's name was actually Madoff. Like, that would be like saying, should I date this person? Her name's Betty, I'm going to cheat on you. Like, would you date that person? You know, or buy a car from Bill, this car's a jalopy, don't buy from me. But people bought stock from a guy whose name was Bernie Madoff. You can't make this stuff up. Anyway, because we have the Securities and Exchange Commission, all these groups who want to go public have to give you what they call a prospectus. They have to issue with the SEC a prospectus. And what this is a document that says, hey, this is how much money we expect to make in our initial public offering. This is how much physical capital we have. This is what our outlook looks like for us getting into bigger markets, etc. So, In terms of foreign stock exchanges too, guys, you can buy securities anywhere around the world depending on what exchange you're at. You can buy securities in foreign markets. I am going to ask you, though, for our exercises in class, that you do limit your investments to U.S. traded companies, just for the idea of keeping everybody on a level playing field. But you can invest in foreign countries all the time. Before we get into the difference between stocks and bonds, we're going to pause for our first question and answer of the day. What would you like to ask? Or I will randomly call upon a soul who will have to tell me, yes, sir.
So when you actually start investing, what do you think is like a good number or cash account to start with?
You mean in terms of like what percentage of your income?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to give you a long answer to a short question. And so this is my personal strategy. I tend to be a very conservative investor. I'm not a high-risk person, so keep that in mind when you're listening to this. I think when you first get your first job out of college, most employers will offer you something like a 401k. Have you heard of those? For anybody who doesn't know, this is some personal finance advice. It may actually help you in your retirement. A 401k means that you are investing in your own retirement, and your employer will do a match. Now, you can select how your money gets invested. You can select if you want to do high-risk stocks. You can select if you want to do conservative stocks. You can select if you want to put it in bonds. Do a combination of high and low risk. How do we do a combination of high and low risk? High and low risk, meaning that you're doing some things that are aggressive in the market, that are going to get you growth, and that you're going to get some sure things. An example of high risk would be tech. An example of high risk would be things like biopharmaceuticals. Examples of sure things are like real estate and funds that have proven themselves. When you're younger, put a larger percentage into high risk, high growth, and as you age, transition into a more solid conservative strategy. Why would I say that, by the way?
I feel like right now with the high risk, you have your whole life for that to gain speed.
Yep.
As you're slowing down.
Absolutely. At best, I got 25 years. Well, I probably have 25 to 30 years less on this planet than you do. Meaning, if I lose big right now, I've got less time to make it up. Most companies will allow you to contribute a percentage of your income, and they will match. Go to the max. Don't miss it. Just put it in there. And as far as playing the markets, I view playing the markets, if you're doing strict trading on your own, if you're going with an investment service like I use Chase for mine, assume that's money you could lose. Assume it's like gambling. Diversify, put your money in some sure things like your 401k and mutual funds. Pick a percentage that you're willing to gamble with. And as far as knowing the right time to get out, that's like trying to predict, who's going to win the Super Bowl at the beginning of the season. It's anybody's guess. So make sure you got something stable. The other thing I also encourage everybody in this room to do, you're going to hear this from some of our speakers too. Every time you get paid, I don't care if you can afford $50 away or $10 away, take something off the top of your paycheck and stick it in cash someplace you can't get to it. That's paying yourself for your work. So whatever you can afford. Always have cash, always have a medium risk investment, and use your high risk as your gamble. Is that a fair answer to your question? I mean, when I say that, keep in mind, I'm not a finance instructor. Somebody like Dr. Keeley may give you better advice than I can. Other questions? Trust me, by the time we get to the end of this chapter, you're going to be ready to do more of this kind of stuff. All right, let's talk about stocks, and let's talk about what they actually are. If you own stock, you own a share of a company. You literally own part of that company. By the way, there is a sports team in the NFL who is publicly owned by people who happen to like that sport team. You literally can buy a share of the team. Who am I talking about? Yeah, the Green Bay Packers. It was so funny. I was at a conference this weekend, and a lady said, her fun fact, I'm a partial owner of the Green Bay Packers. So she does. She owns a share of it. Would you like to own a share of the Green Bay Packers? Yeah, I would too. Guys, it comes down to if you're owning part of a company, you're owning a share in that company. You get something called a stock certificate that verifies. It's like having a receipt. And if your stock makes money, if your stock appreciates in value, you can get paid a dividend. Now, guys, here's something to remember. Let's say, for example, I own share in a company. They're making money gangbusters this year. Are they legally required to pay me a dividend? They're making lots of money, and I own part of the company. They have to pay me. They do not. Very good. Stocks are not required to pay dividends. Here's a question for you, though. Let's say, for example, that we all own a share in Ford Motor Company. The Ford Motor Company made a ton of money last year, and we're saying, wow, we're going to get our dividends. And the folks at Ford make this decision. The board makes this decision. We're not paying out dividends because we want to reinvest in the company. How do we as shareholders feel about that? You happy you're not getting paid? What do you think, Sam? We'd be saying, where the hell is my money? You guys are making money. Where's mine? What action can we as shareholders take? Any guesses? What do you think? You can vote. Every year you can vote in an election for who's going to make up the board. And guess what? If you own 10 shares of stock, you get 10 votes. If you own 20 shares of stock, you get 20 votes. If you're a high roller and you own 1,000 shares of stock, you get 1,000 votes. And so that is how shareholders have to be kept happy. So the big advantages of stocks, we can get money really quickly. We don't have to pay dividends. And if you're pulling in money, it looks good. Our company, Uber, even though we're not making money yet, we had a great IPO and we had a cash infusion into the company. Here's some of the disadvantages, though. Whoever owns our stock owns us. Think about that, guys. You don't really control your own company. If you are getting a dividend, if you own shares in Amazon and they're making money, you got to pay tax on that because it's income. And here's the other thing, too, guys. Let's think about this for a second. Let's say, for example, I'm the CEO of our company. I'm the CEO of Ford Motor Company. I'm trying to keep you guys happy as my employees. I'm also trying to keep the shareholders happy, too. What do employees generally want? What makes employees happy, guys? What? Benefits, pay, better job security, better wages. All those things can hurt a company's bottom line and tick off the shareholders. So if I'm a CEO, excuse me, I have a balancing act between keeping you, the employees, happy and productive and keeping the people who ultimately own our company happy as well. Now, there's two types of stock that you can get, guys. One is common and one is preferred. Don't look at the screen. Tell me. I'm going to give you two stock options here. And if I were giving you common stock or preferred stock, which would you rather have? I'm going to give you common stock. Who wants common stock? Who wants preferred stock? Yeah, it sounds awesome, like preferred stock. Guys, here's the difference between it. Common stock, you have voting rights. Preferred stock, you give up your voting rights in exchange for an agreement that you will get paid first if there's a dividend. So you can get a dividend even when other people aren't. And there's three kinds of preferred stock. There's callable, convertible, and cumulative. The only ones I want you to worry about are callable and convertible. So in terms of common stock, we get voting rights. By the way, we're going to talk about what callable and convertible mean. Common stock means you get voting rights. Preferred stock, you get better dividends. And the reason I put this up, in the 80s, guys, this is how into the stock market we were. They actually had cologne for men called preferred stock, and it was like all about making money. So, by the way, the difference between callable and convertible stock, I would write this down. Callable means, for example, you can get paid out. You can get bought back on callable stock. Convertible stock can be converted into other types of assets within the company. You can trade your stock in for other kinds of ownership. Callable and convertible applies more in the bond market. I wouldn't worry about it too much in the stocks. When we get into the bond market, that's when callable and convertible carries more weight. So, but I digress. We're going to go for a couple more slides here before I allow you to have some time to form groups. Guys, we talked about the idea of primary markets. If there's a new security, it's a primary market. It's an IPO. It's the first time we offer it. The secondary market means you're buying through a broker. You are buying from somebody else. The analogy is it's just like the used car market versus the secondary market. If you buy a new car from Subaru, Subaru makes the money from you. You bought it from the company that made it. If you buy it from the secondary market, the used car dealer makes the money regardless if they made the car or not. That's the same deal with primary and secondary markets in the stock market. So, guys, we're going to cover a couple things about bonds, and then we're going to break into groups. So, guys, in terms of the difference between a stock and a bond, we know that if we issue stock, we get money and people own our company. What's another term for a bond? It begins with an L. Yes, it is. A bond is a loan. If I'm issuing a bond, I'm saying to you, my investors, will you invest in my company? Can I borrow money from you? Now, if you borrow money from the bank, when you pay it back, what else do you have to pay? You got interest. Exactly right. That's legally required, by the way. I'd write this down. That interest is legally required. So the bond is actually you borrowing money. The principal is what is the face value. If I'm borrowing $20,000, the principal is I'm borrowing $20,000. You're going to pay it back with interest. The maturity date means how long are you holding it out till? If I borrow money for 5 years, that means I've got 60 months to pay it off. The maturity date will be whenever that is actually paid off. And interest is the money that the person who lent me the money or the company that lent me the money is making. Here's the trick, what people don't realize, guys. Companies issue bonds all the time. If you've never heard of a municipal bond, if you live in a city, for example, that needs to expand their water system or needs to expand their power, they can issue what's called a municipal bond. That means they're borrowing money to be able to pay for upgrades. Otherwise, if you were a municipality, if you're a city, what's your option? How do you finance what you need if you're not taking out bonds? Yes, exactly right. And that's why, for example, why municipal bonds are somewhat popular, because nobody wants to tell the taxpayers we're raising your rates. So again, interest is legally required. You have to pay interest. In terms of some of the types of bonds that are out there, guys, just things to give you. For example, if you've ever got a U.S. savings bond or a treasury bill or treasury note, these are ways in which we can lend money to our own government and they have to pay us back. Has anybody ever had their grandparents give them a U.S. savings bond, by the way? Did they actually give you the bond too, like the paper?
Yeah, it's like every year for Christmas, my aunt gave us like bonds.
Yeah, that's a big deal. You sit on those things for a while and you have a source of money that maybe you weren't even counting on, and there it is. It's a very old-timey thing, but it's cool that people still do it. And we go the whole way down to what we refer to as Yankee bonds. And that means that we are allowing other governments to issue loans in their own countries, but using U.S. capital as a security. What I just care that you know about this is that you can lend money to your own government. Well, let me ask you guys, let's compare it. If we had somebody who issued stock in the company versus somebody who issued a bond. Right now, this side of the room, you guys are financing your company by issuing stock. You guys on this side of the room issued a bond. What advantage do you guys have? What advantage does a bond have over a stock? It is. Tell me how. It's exactly right. You guys, if we borrowed money to finance our company, we have to pay it off. We basically know what we have to do. We're not worried about if the markets are up or down once we've got that bond. Guys, what's a disadvantage of having a bond? That's an advantage. What's the disadvantage of having a bond for us? What are we legally required to pay? Interest, you got it. Now, one of the advantages over the stock market, though, these guys over here, you guys, what's a disadvantage of financing your business with stocks? What might be a disadvantage? Who ultimately has control of your company?
Stockholders.
Yep, you got it right. The shareholders can vote your board out. Over here, we can still do whatever we want. You guys have control of your company. You're still in debt. You got to pay somebody off, but you're making your own decisions. The folks who are doing the stock kind of financing, not so much. You can also, by the way, if you have a bond, you can deduct the interest as tax deductible. Where bonds are different than stocks. Stocks, when they appreciate, we have to pay income tax. And again, we can also pay these off ahead of time. If you are in a place to pay off your debt, you can. Some of the disadvantages are where a stock market brings money into our company. We issue stock, we look good because we bring money into the company. Bonds, it looks like we're further in debt because we are. That looks bad on a balance sheet. You got to pay interest, and again, you've got to pay the whole value of the bond back, where we do not have to pay dividends to the stock market if we are in that particular market. So we're gonna stop at that point. But what I'm going to give you a few minutes I would like you to start talking to your friends for the next 7 minutes, and we need to form groups of 4 to 5. I'm going to be asking you on Friday to email me. Take a few minutes before we leave, 4 to 5 people in your group. Come up with a creative name.